Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Carrow Road, where Norwich City have been comprehensively beaten here today by Burnley. A 3-0 defeat for David Wagner's Canaries. It's probably brought everyone back down to earth with a little bit of a bump. It's now one win in 11 in all competitions at Carrow Road for Norwich City. They haven't won here since that win over Stoke in October. They've only won here once, actually, which was that Stoke game since the middle of September. So the form at this place at the moment is not great. It's not a great scoreline. It wasn't a particularly great performance. I do feel like there is some context, which is my favourite word, to throw into this game, and I'll try and dissect it. But let's start with each of the goals. So Norwich City were unchanged today. New signing Marquinhos was on the bench, but didn't get on. Christoph Solis, who has returned from FC Twente, was also on the bench, but did get on. Norwich, look, and again, I'll wrap the context into this maybe a little bit later, but the first goal comes after 8 minutes. It's a goal kick. Norwich set up as they want to set up with the centre-back split. They offer Tim Krul a short passing option. The full-backs then push a little bit higher up to allow them to clip the ball into those areas if there's a real press. And obviously the shape is, because of what Norwich try and do from goal kicks, particularly if they decide they're going to play them short, is quite stretched. So there is an option to try and play over a press if that happens. Tim Krul, look, let's be honest about it. He's been really shaky since he came in. I felt from a distribution perspective, that's been quite evident, and there've been warning signs of this kind of thing happening at both Preston and at Coventry. Certainly at Preston, there was one, I think, in the first half where he gave the ball to one of their strikers. I want to say Cannon, but I might have got that wrong. And then last week as well, there was one I think he gave straight to Gustavo Hamer. Well, he's been punished for this one. And I think I felt it was a really harsh decision time to drop Angus Gunn out of net. I've not changed that view. I think Norwich City's best goalkeeper at the moment is not playing, and that's a real shame. And I find it, nobody has to tell Tim Krul he's made a mistake. He's an honest enough professional, good enough guy, done enough for this club to know when he's made an error. I think every time you watch it back, it gets worse. I'm not quite sure what he has seen, or in the case of Anis Daruri, not seen, in order for him to think that pass is even on at the opportunity that it is. Where he's got his head up and then looked down to play the pass and shifted, but it doesn't really look like that from replays. For a player of his experience, which I think is why there's probably a lot of criticism directed on and spotlight on that mistake naturally. It was so poor, such a poor, inexcusable error for someone of his stature, quality, the amount of Premier League appearances that he has. But ultimately, it underpins everything that I think the majority of Norwich fans have felt and seen from this goalkeeping debate in recent weeks, that actually Norwich City's number one, if you want to use that term, has been left out, and he's been left out harshly, and he's been kind of pushed out of the team again in a very harsh manner. And obviously that was because David Wagner arrived and he wiped the slink. Let's try and talk. I've got a little bit of a cold, sorry. He's wiped the slate clean, there we go, for everyone. But he's obviously missing with a hip injury, but it looks like David Wagner said he's had an injection. He feels that he will come back into training mid to next week. So let's hope that he's in a position where he is able to start next weekend at Bristol City, because it feels like that is a process that needs to happen to facilitate the way Norwich City want to play when they do play it short. Because what we had today actually was them setting up to play short and the crowd then getting on their backs, understandably. So not that I condone it, because I feel the way that Norwich City play, there's going to need a little bit of buy-in and acceptance. But when someone makes a mistake like that, it's understandable why the reaction is one of nervousness and anxiety and fearfulness when he has the ball at his feet. So it's understandable that. But so that was the first goal. But for as much spotlight sort of put on the first goal, and Krul needs to be the same spotlight pieces that Norwich conceded in the space of 5 minutes. Really, really poor wanted to concede. The first one from Vitino, who'd been on pitch a matter of seconds, his first touch. He made a simple movement to the goal, no one picked him up, he made movement. Max Aarons blocked it just a field away from him. So again, he's already trying to take up ground. And for a player to then be able to work and get the time he does, again, I think I've only seen it from one angle. It does seem could do better. I think I'm very that's a real error as well. And obviously the third goal is a Ian Matson. Again, makes a movement completely unchallenged, get on that. No player alive to the situation, puts it across goal, and puts it free. Three really cool goals for Norwich. Any team to concede. You do in any game concede the goal in as cheap as Norwich did, and it's been seen throughout the season, irrespective of head coach. It's been a consistent that we've seen. I think splashed up a graphic during the coverage that City have the managers to show. I don't think that's a place. And look, there was always going to be teething issues, I think, from the way David Wagner and Watson already played. What we saw in the opening 25 minutes, that was a pretty very, very poor individual errors. Actually, they weren't quite right. Really pressed really into the team. Actually, as a collective, that made a real impact. They really caught on to the tactical approach that Norwich City have been deploying, where Raheem Clay dropped between centre backs. There was times where Gabriel Sauer into the same, and it after the same kind of success it has done in recent, because they clocked it. The Bars do a clever role with that, and so they're inverted wing as well. It was a very good display, and this and where it leads me maybe on a general point, which is as we walked into the game, and there was a lot of optimism around Norwich City, and yes, there was a lot of feeling that maybe the corner had been turned, and that the result of press commentary were enough to inspire confidence in people. And what we saw was actually Burnley, who are 20 points ahead of Norwich City in the Championship, look a point better than they were, and that's what we saw. It's now 23 points, and it meant this was a game Norwich really interesting, because they're not going to catch Burnley from United in terms of promotion. It is all kind of a playoff for the players, and that is actually the wins. The results are going to have to come from teams maybe slightly lower down the table. So that's 1 point. I think further on the line, it's really interesting actually the approach that the teams took, because Burnley have gone to kind of rip everything up, start again almost. There, Norwich City on the flip of that have tried to stick with continuity. Let's see. Right, hopefully I'm back, and hopefully you can all hear me. Thank you for persevering. Sorry, I think there's a few Wi-Fi issues in Carrow Road this evening, which is not quite what we're used to here. But hey, that's the pitfalls of doing this live. So hopefully you can hear and see me now. Do let me know if that's the case, and we will continue. For anyone who's watching this back, sorry, this doesn't make for good watching. So I'll just recap what I said. Really, 3 poor goals that Norwich City conceded. Burnley obviously top of the league, and moved into this game 20 points ahead of Norwich City at the top of the Championship. That's a seismic gap, and I felt we saw that at points during this game. They're a team who's going to be playing Premier League football next season. The way they set up, how tactically clever they are and intelligent they are, makes it really difficult. They've only lost, I think, 1 game since August, which was against Sheffield United, and they're currently, or they were on an 8-game winning run. That's obviously now stretched to 9. So all of those elements are really pertinent, and it's important context to wrap into this, because it is a team who are really interesting to watch in terms of tactically what they try and do. So I think a lot of people will come here today and maybe want to compare what Vincent Kompany's doing at Burnley to what Daniel Farke did at Norwich City in terms of stylistics, and that's certainly. There's certainly an element of truth in that. I think it's slightly different, but I won't go into the nuances and niches of it. But actually, this result felt a lot like when Marcelo Bielsa brought Leeds to Carrow Road. I think it was in the title-winning season, and they won that game. And it was very, very difficult for Norwich City on that occasion. They went on, obviously, to have great success in that campaign. But it kind of, no, I think it might have been the first year, maybe maybe he was one of them, but Leeds came here and under Bielsa looked really well coached, really well polished, further along from where Norwich were. And I think that's what we've seen from Burnley. David Wagner's only been in the building for 4 weeks. Obviously, 2 really, really good results have helped kind of the process of things. But actually, when you have a result like this, it can, in a way and in a sense, be more helpful than the results that Norwich City have had previously, where they've won games and won them pretty well. So, as a learning tool and as an exercise for David Wagner, this will have been really, really useful. But also, I think for everyone, it will hopefully act as a little bit of a humbler and a little bit of an expectation setter, and maybe just calm everything down a little bit and put things into perspective as to just how far off those teams in the top 2, Norwich City, actually are and have been all season, and the fact that this campaign really is a playoff push. And this game, in many ways, which I think I was trying to say before the connection broke up, was really interesting in terms of the optics and how you can frame it, because a win here for Norwich City materially didn't really change their likelihood of getting a playoff place, in my view, and they're certainly not going to get top 2, so it doesn't really impact stuff from that. It would have just obviously contributed and fed into the feeling of optimism and positivity that we have seen and that we have felt in the last few weeks. So as a pure result, as one-off in isolation, certainly its impact will probably be better judged by what we see moving forward. There is worrying trends around it, and there have been all season in terms of how Norwich City play against teams in the top 7. I don't think they've beaten anyone in the top 7 this season. That obviously continues. They're going to have to do that at some point if they want to get promotion via the playoffs, of course. But look, if they go through all season with that record and then win the playoffs, I don't think any of us mind, and football works in funny ways. But that's kind of the thing I would add. That Burnley are so much further along under Vincent Kompany and what they're trying to do in their tactical ideas. Really interesting how both clubs have gone off different ideas since relegation from the Premier League. Norwich largely opted for continuity. Burnley got relegated and ripped everything up and kind of rebuilt it again. And I'm sure Vincent Kompany will feel the same. I'd be really intrigued to see, just from Norwich's pure own experience, Burnley are an excellent team at this level, wonderful to watch. They're going to win the league, they're going to get promoted. But actually, probably the more interesting point now is how they make this adaptable to Premier League football and how they cope with that, because they're not going to have as much of the ball as they have in the Championship. They're not going to have as much space, and they're not going to be able to make the mistakes that they make in possession at points. So that, for me, feels now like Vincent Kompany's greater challenge rather than what pans out for the rest of this season. But look, for Norwich, it underlines and epitomises the work that there is left to do. Gabriel Sara at times was the only man in midfield at points. I thought Dowell and Hernandez struggled as well, and the only real chance that Norwich City created this afternoon came from a wonderful ball down the left from Yanulis, who I thought was arguably Norwich City's best performer this afternoon. Into Temu Pukki, he cut the ball back, and Kieran Dowell, basically if he puts it anywhere else than where he puts it and it hits the target, it's a goal. But he tries to be clever and just tuck it in to the near post where Peacock Farrell is stood, almost in hope that because of the way that the game is travelling, he kind of wants to get himself back into a central position. And he was unable to score on that occasion. And from there, it really felt like a tough afternoon. Norwich City didn't create a huge amount. I've seen some people speak about the first goal in terms of the rule, because I think there is an idea, and to be honest, I had a similar one, that the ball had to leave the box from the first pass, but that's not true. I've looked into the law. The law states that as long as the opposition player is outside of the penalty area when the ball is played, then it doesn't matter, and this was the case. So really it was. You could probably have a debate about whether the ball was rolling or whether it wasn't, but to be honest, how bad the mistake was, both of those points should be completely irrelevant to the conversation, particularly when there was an easier pass to make. But I don't necessarily want to dwell on that. And look, if we want to end on a positive note, Norwich City now have games coming up. I think 5 games. All of the teams are 15th or below. So they've got 5 games now over about a month, where they've got an opportunity to really rack up some points. And if they are going to get in the playoffs and they are going to conjure up some momentum and some upward momentum into their campaign, then this is a really important block of fixtures. I actually think it's probably the block of fixtures where we will see whether this Norwich City team will be a top 6 side or whether they won't. I don't think you can tell that from today as much as I don't think you can tell that from Preston and Coventry. My feeling is, and I think I've said this on a few of these, I think they'll just fall short. That's the view that I've had all season. But they've got an opportunity now, and obviously a new coach, a new way of playing, another week of training where they can improve it. But one thing is for sure, if they don't address the situation that they've got at Carrow Road and their form inside this place, we can write it off and we can all go home now, because it won't happen. So a really interesting block of games coming up. They need to brush this one off and quickly. There are teams who will lose to Burnley. I actually felt in open play at points they made the game relatively competitive. Beyond the first 20 minutes and probably the last 20 minutes, that spell in the middle I felt was relatively even, and that's probably what makes the soft goals relatively frustrating, because when you have those periods, they're the bits that you kind of need to turn into opportunities and moments for yourself and make it a game of fine margins. When you're costing team, or when you're giving teams goals, particularly when they're of the quality of Burnley, you have absolutely no chance. I think I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully the internet connection has held up. My apologies for that. It's obviously nothing I can do. That's the nature of these live broadcasts, I'm afraid. That's the risk that we take. Hopefully you've been able to see and hear enough of me that all my points have come through. And obviously lawnmowers as well. So it's been a little bit of a perfect storm, but we've got through it. Thank you very much for watching. Pinken.com, the Pinken Plus app as well, the place to go for plenty more coverage and analysis of this one. And I'll catch you again at Bristol City next weekend. Thanks for watching.